Okay, so for this video, we'll be discussing about subqueries in MySQL. And the source of my slides here is from MySQLtutorial.org. So thank you very much from MySQLtutorial.org. So the objectives of this slide or this lecture will be we'll be discussing about subqueries and subqueries in a where clause, subqueries in a from clause, and also about correlated subqueries. So introduction. A MySQL subquery is a query nested within another query such as select, insert, update, or delete. Also, a subquery can be nested within another subquery. So if we have a query inside a query, then that query inside a query is what we call the subquery. So we will be discussing more of this as we go on. So a MySQL subquery is called an inner query, while the query that contains the subquery is called the outer or an outer query. A subquery can be used anywhere that expression is used and must be closed in parentheses. So it should be enclosed in parentheses. So here's an example. So introductions, we have here select last name, first name from employees, where office code in, then we have select office code from offices where country equals USA. So the subquery returns all office code. So this is the subquery enclosed in parentheses. So it returns all office code located in the USA. That's why we have here select office code from offices where country equals USA. So the subquery returns all office code inside or located in the USA. Then the outer query now selects the last name and first name of employees who work in the offices. So where office code offices or offices whose office codes are in the result set returned by the subquery. So that means this will be the last name and first name of employees who are working maybe in the USA. Okay, so again, the outer query selects the last name and first name of employees who work in the offices whose office code are in the result set of this one. So the result set of these are office codes located in the USA. So that's the subquery. This one is a subquery. So here's again the part of the query a while ago. So we have here the outer query, and we have here the subquery or the inner query. So when executing the query, MySQL evaluates a subquery first. So this will be evaluated first, and then uses the result of this query for the outer query. So the result of this will be used by the outer query. So instead of, for example, doing this manually, so we do this and then writing the office codes here one by one, separated by comma, then we can just make use of a query inside another query or a subquery. So subquery in a where clause. So we will use the table payments. So the payments table shown here, which contains customer number, check number, payment date, and the amount in the sample database for the demonstration. I told you we don't have a sample database, so this will be our table. So MySQL subquery with comparison operator. So you can use the comparison operator, equal, greater, lesser than, etc., to compare a single value returned by the subquery. So here we're assuming that the subquery, or we use this if the subquery will return a single value. But if the subquery will return multiple values, we cannot make use of equal, greater than, lesser than, etc. So let's go on. So for the following example, query returns the customer who has the highest payment. So this one returns, the subquery here returns a single value. So we can use equal, lesser than, or greater than. And what will this do? So this will return the highest payment, so max amount from payments. And then if you want to know who paid the highest payment, or so it can be multiple customers also. So who among the customers paid the highest amount? Then we have select customer number, although this will display only the customer number, check number and amount from payments where the amount is equal to the highest value. So this will display the highest customer, the record of the customer number, check number and amount from payments. So that's the highest amount. Okay, so this will evaluate the subquery first, and then the result will be used by the outer query. So again, we can use this if this will return only a single value. So besides the equal operator, you can use other comparison operators such as the greater than, equal to, less than, greater than or equal to, rather, less than, and less than or equal to. So for example, you can find customers whose payments are greater than the average payment using a subquery. So here, let's take a look at the subquery. So this will give us the average amount. So of all the queries, so this will return just a single value. And this will now return all the customer number, check number, and amount from payments where the amount here is higher than the average amount. So that will be the result of this query. So in this example, so let's again take a look at this. First, get the average payment from the subquery. So this will get the average, and then select the payments. So these are the payments that are greater than the average. So greater than the average returned by the subquery in the outer query. So again, you can use only this if it returns a single value in our subquery. So how about if our subquery will return many values? So here I have your example, but we'll be having more example maybe later in our class. So here we have your in and the not in operator. So we can use this if our subquery returns multiple values. But other from this, or aside from this, we also have the greater than any, greater than all, lesser than any, or lesser than all, or equal to any, which is the same as in. Okay, so I'll be explaining more of that maybe in my next video or in our other lectures. So if a subquery returns more than one value, you can use the other operators such as in or not in operator in the where clause. So see the following customers and order table. So let's try to examine the two tables. We have customer number, name, last name, first name, phone, address line 2, city, state, postal code, country, and sales rep, employee number, and credit limit. So that's the customer. So we have here the orders table. So they're actually related. So we have order number, order date, required date, ship date, status, comments, and customer number. And of course, the relationship. So we can relate them using customer number and customer number. And the relationship is one to many. So a single customer can have several many orders or none, no orders. And of course, an order could be placed by one and only one customer. So an order, so that's a single order, can be placed by a customer. So there will be no orders with no customers. So that's the relationship of these two tables. So for example, you can use a subquery with not in operator to find that customers who have not placed in orders. So as you notice here, a customer can have 0 or many orders. So it is possible for a customer to have not ordered yet. So that is what we're looking for in this subquery. So we would like to get the name of customers who have not ordered yet. So here in this example, you notice here that in this subquery, we select the customer number, so maybe just distinct. So distinct customer number from orders. And if the customer number of this table, customers table, is not in the customer numbers here, the result of this subquery, then that means that this particular customer have not placed any orders yet. Okay, so the result of this will be used by the outer query. Okay, let's proceed. So when we use a subquery in the from clause, so this time around, how do we use a subquery in a from clause? So when you use a subquery in the from clause, the result set returned from a subquery is used as a temporary table. So that will be used as a table. It's a temporary table. So this table is referred to as a derived table or materialized subquery. So the following subquery finds the maximum, minimum, and average number of items in sales order. So this is a subquery. And then we have here another query. So here we select order number and then count the items. So this can have multiple values, so several lines. So we would like to count how many items are there per order number. So let's say per order, some have ordered 10 products or 10 items, so that will give us 10. Other orders maybe ordered 20 products, so that will give us 20. So we have order number and then count from order details, group by order number. So we're trying to summarize how many items are there per order number as line items, so we call that the line items, and the result of this will be used by this outer query. So we would like to know what's the highest number of items, what's the lowest number of items, and what's the average number of items. The floor here will of course just remove the fraction, so we are rounding it off to with no decimal places, so round down, some sort of round down. Okay, so again the result of this will be used by this. So here we're counting the items, so let's just repeat, we're counting the items per order number, and this one will get what is the highest among this, the number of items, lowest number of items, and the average number of items, basing from the results of this subquery. So again, this one, the subquery is inside our from clause. So again, try to examine the query. Okay, let's continue. So again, in the previous example, you notice that a subquery is independent. It means, so previous examples, not only the previous example, it means that you can execute the subquery as a standalone query. So let's say, for example, here you copy this subquery and execute it. So this is actually this one. It can be executed. So it's a standalone subquery. So unlike a standalone subquery, a correlated subquery is a subquery that uses the data from the outer query. In other words, a correlated subquery depends on the outer query. So a correlated subquery is evaluated once for each row in the outer query. So if there's a row in the outer query, and then it will evaluate the subquery. Another row in the outer query, and then it will evaluate the subquery. So unlike the independent subquery. So let's say, for example, we have the following, the products table so we have product code, name, product line, and product scale, product vendor, product description, quantity in stock, by price, MSRP. So product line maybe is the category. So the following example uses a correlated subquery to select products whose buy prices are greater than the average buy price of all products in each product line. Okay, so in this example, both outer query and correlated subquery reference the same products table, so therefore we need to use the table alias P1 for the products table in the outer query. So if you're going to examine this, the subquery will return the average price from products for that particular product line where this is this product belongs. Okay, so that's why you notice here that the product line should be equal to the product line of the outer query. That's why we have your P1 dot product line. So the subquery is dependent on the value of the outer query. That's why this is a correlated subquery. So for each item here, then we're going to get the average of that particular product line. Okay, and then if the buying price of this is higher than the average buying price for that particular product line, then we display the name and the buy price. Again, if the buying price of this product is higher than the average buying price for that particular product line. So when we say product line, that's the category of product. Let's say, for example, where on the product line is beverages, for example. So is the buying price of that particular beverage higher than the average price of all beverages? So in this example, both outer, yeah. So I think I have mentioned this. So that's why we have here P1. So P1 is referring to the products table of the outer subquery. So again, since this one, we need the data from the outer query, that's why it's called a correlated subquery. We cannot execute this standalone subquery. So again, unlike a regular subquery, you cannot execute a correlated subquery independently like this. If you do so, MySQL doesn't know the P1 table and will issue an error. So in this case, so for each row in the products or P1 table, the correlated subquery needs to execute once to get the average buy price of all products in the product line of that row. If the buy price of the current row is greater than the average buy price returned by the correlated subquery, then the query includes the row in the result set. So it will be displayed if that's the case. Okay. Then next, we have the MySQL subquery with exist and not exist. When a subquery is used with the exist or not exist operator, a subquery returns a Boolean value of true or false. The following query illustrates a subquery used with the exist operator. So select asterisk from table name, so whatever field, then where exists, and then we have the subquery here. In the query above, if the subquery returns any rows, so if there are any rows here, then this gives a true value. So if this gives a true value, then that means that that particular record or row will be included in the record set. So returns exist subquery returns true, otherwise returns false. The exist and not exist are often used in the correlated subqueries. So take a look at the order and order details. So we have here order details, order number, product code, quantity ordered, price for each. So in the unit price, order line number. And then orders, we have order number, order date, required date, ship date, status, comments, and customer number. So we can relate this using order number and order number. So the following query finds sales order whose total values are greater than 60,000. So here, so inner join, so we have select order number, sum of price each times quantity ordered. So we multiply for the total from order details, inner join orders. So we join with orders using order number. So that means order number is equal to order number. Group by order number, having some price and quantity greater. So we're going to get all orders with total sum price higher than 60,000. This is not yet the this will be included in this will be the subquery we'll be using for our next example. So again, this will give us what? The orders whose totals, so order number and the total. So this will display, or this will be the order number and the total will be included in the results set of all order details whose total is higher than 60,000. So that's why we have here the having sum. So you can use this query above as a correlated subquery to find customers who placed at least one sales order with a total value greater than 60,000. So we would like to find who are the customers who have ordered at least once where the value is higher than 60,000. So we can use the exist operator. So here we have select customer number, customer name from customers where exists. So this is now our subquery. So we're looking for select order number, sum price from orders. So again, this will get the total value per order number. But here we would like to get only for a particular customer that is taken from the outer's query. That's why we have here where customer number is equal to customers dot customer number. So this will display now. This one will be displayed, the name of the customer and the customer number will be displayed if that particular customer have ordered or have placed an order having a total of higher than 60,000. Okay, so that's it for the summary. A subquery is a query nested within another query or outer query. A correlated subquery depends on the outer query. So thank you very much for viewing this video.